Hey everybody, how are you? That's good. I'm sorry you're doing lousy. Congratulations and my condolences. All right. I just wanted to come in and just kind of, it's getting late at night. I want to talk some football. So, since we had such an exciting week, and let's see what happens with the playoff, I guess, with the conference championships. Ravens are hosting the Chiefs. 49ers are expect to have a great game against Detroit, and that's conference championships. That's exciting for everybody involved. So, I think so. But I want to talk about what's not. I kind of like the business side of football. So, of course, we're going to talk about my my team, Carolina Panthers, since they made two major moves this week. And I guess we'll get into the NFC South. So we'll start with Atlanta a little bit here. This head coach and hire they hired Morris. Morris, yeah. Raheem Morris is not the most successful head coach. I mean, he is okay as a head coaching hire. I like defensive coaches. I think here's the thing. It's not Raheem Morris. I don't really. He didn't do that great in Tampa. But it's not really him that I distrust as much as it is the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta, they had Dan Quinn, and Dan Quinn was not able to get over that Atlanta hurdle. Mike Smith, they had the same problems with Mike Smith that they had with Dan Quinn. And at some point, you just have to say something's up with this culture because something's not right with this team here. You're playing half a game. You're spending several years playing half a game of football. You either starting off lousy and then find yourself having to come back and you rally in the second half, or you rally in the first half, crush everybody, and then just kind of choke it up and let your team come back, rally up against you. It's like you can't get a full 60 minutes out of this team. And it seemed to be just when you were winning or whether you were losing, that was what you were getting from the Falcons. It was predictable. That's why when they were up 28-3, I'm like, yeah, I'll believe it when it's over. And sure enough, I was like, it's Tom Brady, and it was Atlanta. Two nothing. I was like, yeah, here it comes. And so if the Falcons can get over that, now they're just, I mean, eh, I don't even know what to say about it now. I mean, um, this feels like more of the same until we get other things out there. I mean, they have the talent. You got Drake London, but you had Calvin Ridley too. And it's not a question of talent, it's just a question of Atlanta. And what are you supposed to do with this organization? How do you get over a culture of losing? Same question I have to the Saints. It's like I do not trust in the Saints. Only team in the NFC South we can trust, of course, right now is Tampa, and their head coach is Tom Bowles or Todd Bowles. Sorry, Todd Bowles, who does a nice job coaching defenses, but outside of that, what do you got? They did go to the playoffs the last 2 years with Todd Bowles. I'll give them that. And but how long can that defense hold up and keep carrying that team? It's rough, and especially most of the time when a defense is carrying a team, they at least have a running back that can keep them going. They are avoiding turnovers. Baker is a reliable quarterback. I think that's the right quarterback to go for your future. He belongs to a place like Tampa. He did not belong in Carolina for personality conflict reasons. Some guys, and it's not you're a bad guy. It's just your personality messes with the organization or it doesn't. I've worked at jobs, my personality just did not mesh with where I was working. And it did not, it does not go well. Uh, or you have to take a while to develop a personality that does cooperate with where your team is and what they're able to do. And it may be nobody's fault. It's just that's how business is. It's no different in sports. So, yeah. Uh, so, who can challenge Tampa? Right now, Tampa's the king of the hill. And they look like they're going to be king of the hill for quite a long time unless somebody in one of these other teams can finally just jump over that hurdle and climb over that hill. So, who's it going to be? Who's going to challenge the Buccaneers? I thought it'd be Atlanta. I thought it'd be New Orleans. Well, first I thought it'd be New Orleans, then I thought it'd be Atlanta, I, and I thought Carolina has a chance last year. Uh, so now I'm looking at this. I'm going, oh boy, that Panthers hired Dan Morgan to be the general manager, and then they gave him some serious power and made him president of football operations. So this guy is not just answering the phone and negotiating deals. Now he's writing up the contracts himself too. He's got power and he's got dominion, and at least according to the titles of his position. How much he uses them, I don't know. Sometimes guys, they get the title and they're like, "Ooh, this is really good to have. I got a lot I can do with this." And great, I'm glad you got a lot you can do with this, but what exactly are you doing with it? So, a couple days later, the Panthers hire a head coach. They were supposed to talk to Mike Vrabel, so I would have figured if you're gonna hire a head coach, you probably got desperate and said, "What can we do to get you on this team?" And um, it was just not an interesting situation. And I guess they just weren't interested. I guess I don't know what happened, but the last thing I expect to hear is we hired this underperforming offensive coordinator from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers who barely won half their games. And like, well, you did. The quarterback looked good. Yeah, 32nd in rushing, 20th in points scored, 23rd in yards, or or 17th in yards or something like, or yeah, I mean, last place in running the ball, last place in run per or in rushing yards per play. 20th and 23rd. I mean, not exactly head coaching numbers, is it? Well, you look at the resume alone, 1 year of offensive coordinator, unimpressive. This guy should not be a head coach. You look at, so this was definitely a relationship hire. Dave Tepper doesn't usually make relationship hires. He makes resume hires. This is not a resume. This is the least qualified resume for a Panthers head coach. So maybe things are turning, or maybe it's just that bad that nobody wants this job. But chances I mean, but you could, but then I said, okay, if this was even out of the guys that cannot get a head coaching job, there were more qualified people available who would have loved to have the head coaching gig in Carolina. I mean, you want to look at Buck's offensive coordinators. Byron Leftwich got screwed a year ago, being fired as offensive coordinator. He wasn't fired because he was bad at his job. He was fired because Tom Brady was bad at his job. He was fired because Leonard Fournette was bad at his job. He was their fall guy for a geriatric quarterback and a geriatric running back. They got their success, they got their money. Brady had his divorce, so and but Brady, I mean, he chased that last year. He chases the head coach Bruce Arians up to the office, so he doesn't have to deal with him off the sideline, and so they promote Todd Bowles to be the head coach. Bowles has done a nice job in Tampa. You got two playoff runs out of it, but why did you make Byron Leftwich your fall guy? Why did you get rid of all this coaching stuff? I mean, okay, they went 9-8. Congratulations, you had a Baker Mayfield who happened to be available, and he made the most out of his opportunity because he finally found a team that isn't going to misuse him, mistreat him, or uh, just not be a right or misplace him. Or just be not the right place for him. I mean, he finally Baker got to be in the organization he deserves to be with. But Todd Bowles, like, definitely firing Byron Leftwich, that made no sense. Like, why didn't you just let Tom Brady retire and say that's my fall guy? Oh, no, 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 Brady's great, da, 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 da. I mean, when you just say Brady got old. That's it. That's all you had to say. You didn't have to fire Byron Leftwich. So you let Byron Leftwich. I mean, because now what I'm looking at, if I'm looking at a qualified head coach and nobody wants to work with me, I'm looking at Byron Left to say, hey, you want to stick it to your former team? You got 2 games a year against Tampa. You already know what the Falcons are like. You already know what the Saints are like because they refuse to change. When you say come here, and you got a rookie quarterback, Bryce Young, he'll listen to anybody. He's really good guy, and oh yeah, that's our number one overall pick. What do you think? I mean, and that's just out of the Bucks coordinators from last couple of years. Byron Leftwich, it was considered a candidate for a head coaching job 2 years ago. He won a Super Bowl with you. The guy's got potential, right? When you look at that resume. Instead, they went with this nice guy, Dave Canales, and you say, what's there on this guy's resume? Position coach. Okay, he could be a head coach someday. Not right now. He's only got 1 year proven himself as the offensive coordinator. He hasn't done anything yet. He's better. I mean, he didn't make the team worse. They look better at quarterback. They look better in the passing game. Not great, but better. All running game still looks terrible. How do I go out there and look these guys in the eye and say, yeah, this guy gets the best out of everybody? Oh, your team won because of the defense in Tampa. This was a relationship hire. And that relationship was with Dan Morgan. It wasn't with David Tepper, which means big dog in town is pretty clear. It's Dan Morgan. He's the unofficial owner, what I call the unofficial owner. Every organization has one. Sometimes it coincides with the official owner. Usually, when it does coincide with the official owner, like it did last year, usually works into a disaster. Jerry Richardson or Jerry Jones, well, yeah, Jerry Jones was the unofficial owner in Dallas and the official owner. Hasn't won a playoff game in next year. If assuming Dallas even goes to the Super Bowl, let's just say Dallas has a magical season, they go to the Super Bowl next year. It'll be 30 years in between going to Super Bowls for them. This is a team that should be, they haven't been to the conference championship in those 30 years because of the unofficial owner slash official owner. That's a coincidence that should not happen. Sometimes, I mean, having official owner and unofficial owner as a certain person is a good coincidence. It's a good thing to have happen. I've worked on teams. I worked on a team at Chick-fil-A. We were efficient as all get out because that was the case. But, um, usually official owner is just the guy that knows where to find the unofficial owner. And he says, no, that's the thing. Um, right now, it seems to be Dan Morgan, and I am encouraged, I guess, with Dan Morgan. It's definitely a lot better situation than having Dave Tapper spilling drinks on people. Cheers. There's one drop in there. All right. Yeah, that's about how much the Panthers have left. That's about how much patience I have left with this team. So, or did have left. So, we hired this Dave Canales, who is completely unqualified. For what? Hmm? Because they say he can coach quarterbacks, they say he can coach wide receivers. Well, are you actually going to be aggressive in throwing the football, or can I expect you to just try to run the football all day long into a in a basically 0 yards average, and to basically get nothing accomplished? Is Chuba Hubbard going to get some help? Are they going to get an offensive line? Are they going to get things really improved? Or is this just. Here's the thing about it. The situation in Carolina is not as bad as the media is making it out to be. Uh, the owner is, but the situation is not. And the reason I say the situation is not, there are teams who have been in much worse situations than Carolina who found success pretty quickly. I mean, I remember what the Texans were like a year ago, and I was like, there's no way I would go anywhere near that team. And I just sort of, I was like, dude, they throw everybody under the bus. Only everybody's the bad guy. Oh, DeAndre Hopkins, he's the bad guy. Oh man, no, that's the head coach, the head Bill O'Brien, he's the bad guy. Oh, now Deshaun Watson is the bad guy. He's really bad. Oh man, Deshaun Watson, he committed sexual assault and stuff. Yeah, and he's played the race card, and Deshaun Watson didn't do himself any favors because they were going to try to kind of build and center the team around him, and things didn't quite go his way. And instead of going, okay, things aren't quite my way, I don't have as much control as I would like to have, he sat up there and tried to fight it. And well, the rest of history here. And I mean, Cleveland's like, oh yeah, we'll love to have his talent here. We really need help at quarterback. And then Deshaun Watson. I mean, look at his career in Cleveland right now. It's laughable. Um, just Cleveland found a way to get it transformed and won, and Cleveland was the one giving up. I mean, you thought the Carolina trade last year was bad. Look what Cleveland surrendered. Look what happened to the Browns, and tell me the Carolina trade was bad. I'm like, nah, Carolina's trades were okay. Yeah, they still have draft picks. They lost a lot of draft picks, but they still have their main ones, except for the first round pick, and I think next year's first round pick or something, or next year's second round pick or something. But they lost last year's first round pick, but they actually moved it up and got Bryce Young, number one overall, which Bryce Young is not behaving like Johnny Manziel or Ryan Leaf. So to say that was a bust, it's way too early to call that one out. Yeah, could become a bust, but could also become a Hall of Fame bust. So be patient. Bradshaw took 3 years to develop. Uh, put that into context. Peyton didn't win a playoff game for about 5 years or so. Took a long time for Kurt Warner to get himself ready for the NFL. He had to go through the Arena Football League to get ready. It wasn't a number one overall pick, but I'm just saying it takes these guys time to become those players, and it takes a lot of help. Carolina doesn't have the patience to give people the help they need to excel. Maybe they will now. I mean, what else? What they got to lose, right? The situation in Carolina, it's not as bad as what Steve Wilkes was given. It's not as good as what Frank Reich was given. But then again, it's not as good as actually what we thought Frank Reich was given. What it turned out Frank Reich was given was a lot of experts and a lot of people in the room. And it turned out there was a backstabbing culture. There was an impatient owner. We did know about the impatient owner because he's fired two head coaches in the middle of the season. So we knew about the dumb owner. We knew about the bad history with Carolina, but we had not known that this culture was going to escalate into its lowest moment ever by everybody betraying each other and everybody just, going behind each other's backs. It was a snake culture. So now it looks like there's a new sheriff in town. That's Dan Morgan. Looks like it's his team. It looks like, all right, cool. Dan Morgan is a guy who was promoted from within, something the team needs to do. They need to show some sign of loyalty. Then Dan Morgan said, no, Canales is going to be a good coach. Hire him. Didn't even bother giving much of a chance. Didn't give a fair chance, I should say, to Vrabel. And maybe Vrabel just didn't want to have anything to do with the team anyway. And just, everything was a formality. But whatever the situation was, that was, this is what they have now. I think they could have done better with Byron Leftwich if you're going to go with Buccaneers offensive coordinators. Byron Leftwich was unfairly treated. Byron Leftwich was uh, considered a candidate for a head coaching gig a couple of years ago. Byron Leftwich had the offense rolling, and then he kind of was their fall guy. When you fired the head coach, Bruce Arians, who was an offensive coach, and you listen to Tom Brady, your geriatric quarterback, and you listen to and you let you gave a payday to Leonard Fournette, who had already won his Super Bowl. He got his payday. He's happy. He's good. He make the most of it? No, he did not have the deal. Um, it and, you know, honestly, who would? Like you got me money now. I can sleep at night when you give me the paycheck I wanted. If I feel like I made it, if I got my Super Bowl ring, if I got my family and I'm healthy and I'm happy, and why am I going to come into work and wear myself out to get something I already have? Yeah, I mean, and I understand owners are afraid of guys having that mentality because it's a legitimate fear, obviously, because it happened. But when it does happen, don't go blaming your assistant coach or don't go blaming anybody but the guy who did it. Panthers didn't make a resume decision. And that's the point about comparing Byron Leftwich to Dave Canales. Dave Canales was a relationship hire for Dan Morgan. And he was, maybe they like what they did with quarterbacks. Geno, and they'll talk about Geno Smith. They'll talk about Russell Wilson. They'll talk about Baker Mayfield. And now you got the next guy in line is Bryce Young. This is awesome. And in order to bring this guy onto the team, we had to promote him to head coach. Understood. But you got to understand, this was not a quality resume hire. This was not. Now, that's unusual for David Tepper because he went by resume. This is the guy that gave up Steve Wilkes for the better resume guy in Frank Reich and the better resume guy in, for people who just look better on paper. A lot of people who look. This was different from those moves. This is a different team than what you saw a year ago, which indicates a potential direction going differently from what we saw a year ago, but it also could indicate or legitimize some of the concerns about, well, this guy is going to kind of be forced to listen to his bosses. This is not a guy who's going to be in control. This is a guy who the ownership can control. Well, we'll find out. We'll find out if this is more problems from Mr. Tepper, but right now the guy ain't exactly looking really good. And if he is taking control, he doesn't know football. He's not a football guy. He's a businessman, and he's not a good bit. And he's done great in business, but he's not a sports businessman. Oh, he was partial owner of the Steelers. Yeah, okay. He was a total owner of the Panthers. How's that go? This is unusual for Tapper because usually he goes for the resume. Now, the qualified guys, here's the deal about quality. Okay. The most qualified coaches the Panthers ever had on a resume when they took the head coaching job. This is the least qualified. Dave Canales, the least qualified head coaching hire the Panthers ever had. The most qualified head coaching hires the Panthers had. Number two was Frank Reich. Number one was George Seifert. Both of them were fired, sinking the team into the worst team in the league. Uh, Reich was not allowed to even finish his first season. That's that's what the resume does for you. That's what it means. So the resume is about as useful as a college degree. It can indicate success. It can also indicate a big recipe for disappointment. It's just a very expensive disappointment. Just kind of consider that. Um, Dave Canales being unqualified, well, unqualified people win all the time. Tom Brady was not a number one overall pick quarterback. Neither was Kurt Warner. Neither uh, Terry Bradshaw was not qualified to be an NFL quarterback the year he won his first Super Bowl. I mean, he had the resume from college, and then he blew it. 3 years, year after year after year. Well, 2 or 3 years. Maybe it was his third year he did it, but uh, yeah, I think it was his third year. But I mean, 2 years. I mean, this guy should have been. He would not last in Carolina. No way we would have been patient with Bradshaw in Carolina. Would not have happened. We wouldn't suffer through those years here. Or just one. Kerry Collins, qualified guy, fifth overall pick. Who wouldn't want him on their team? 2 years, NFC Championship, 97. Would you have him as your starting quarterback? No. Why not? Because we now know what happened in 97. His career derailed. The guy was an alcoholic. It was a nightmare. But he just took you to the conference championship before all that. Yeah. Now we know. We had Berline on the team. Of course you go with Berline. Didn't know that back then. Unless you had a crystal ball. 1998 definitely would have gone with Berline. Should have gone with Berline. That was you don't even start Kerry Collins. I mean, you trade him. You try to get what you can out of him before that '98 season starts, or you can get into a time machine. But that's the thing about it is this: you don't know how these stories are going to play out unless you actually set them up. Um, Seaver was the most qualified head coach ever hired by the Carolina Panthers. He had a Hall of Fame resume. Was set. Super Bowl champion, done deal. And then came to Carolina. How? What happened? He was aggressive. His strategy was fine. It wasn't the coaching strategy. It was the coaching relationship. It was the connection. He didn't connect well with people. And that was a team that needed a human coach. They did not have one. I mean, you had a star wide receiver that committed murder. You had guys getting hooked on drugs. I mean, more drug problems than, I mean, any any kind of business I've ever seen. You've had, I mean, I don't think cartels had to worry as much about drugs as the Panthers had to worry about that during that time. You had just a horrible culture. I mean, Seifert was in over his head because he needed to be a human being. He couldn't just be a coach. It happens in the NFL. It happens all the time. Wasn't overqualified, wasn't too qualified, he wasn't too big for the job. It was just, he could not relate to these guys on a human level. Well, he was too old. No, it's not too old. It's just he's too professional. That was his issue. So teams have since then kind of learned those lessons and they've hired these relatable guys trying to connect with these younger guys. So they hired these younger coaches. And so they have this coach brought to the Panthers, able to make relationship connections, not just able to be a some sort of genius or guru. The geniuses are not necessarily leaders. And you just sit there and go, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. You know, right. You're looking for the guys at the top levels to find the leaders and kind of use people the way they need to be used. That's how you find. That's how you find your success. So, are the Panthers on the right track now? Not, not exactly, but they're not often. It's not a completely hopeless situation because what I found in Carolina is this: they did not have the backstabbing culture they had when Rule got fired among the players, just on the player level, just that locker room level, that player level. Three coaches got fired, and guys still hung in there together. They still were complimenting each other. They still were saying, "Okay, we got to hold people accountable," and still said all the same lines and didn't. They didn't lose their level They didn't lose their temper at the locker room level. It was the owner that lost his temper. Like there it is. It's the executives. That's where the problem is. And it was just too many alpha wolves on the office level. Players were willing to listen. Players were willing to work as a team. They were willing to do their jobs. Just didn't have the means to do their jobs. It wasn't a good environment. It wasn't a good fit. And it was kind of too much leadership. It wasn't poor leadership. It was just a poor leadership strategy that maybe could have been molded and if you give it more patience, but that's the owner doesn't have the patience for that. So found another way to see what's going to work for everybody. This is a very difficult situation that the Panthers have. Not an easy locker room situation, but it's not completely hopeless either. Uh, you're not coming out of a situation where people are kicking their players. You're not coming out of a situation where, somebody's committing murder or a guy's throwing his girlfriend on top of loaded weapons on the couch. You're not dealing with some of the weird problems. I mean, nobody murdered three people. Nobody shot themselves in the head at practice. I mean, this is it had definitely been weird, worse situations on and off the Carolina Panthers and there are some teams that probably, at least Carolina's problems are right out in front of the media and everybody knows about it, so you can't hide it. The the teams that are in the most danger, teams don't usually stay at the bottom two as the first or second worst team 2 years in a row. Cleveland's the only team I know that has done that so far in the past 30 years. Well, the Jets, I think, did it, when I first started watching football. I mean, and they didn't take long to get to the AFC Championship after that, so, um, yeah, I mean, yeah, like, yeah, I mean, it just depends on, it just depends on what kind of team you have. Carolina's got a rotten culture, but they'll win a couple games a year. They'll win at least a few. They'll have some moments that are better than others. Next year, it looks like the Panthers are going to try something new and that it's not more of the same. This looks like a team that's willing to change their minds on some things and finally figure out their identity and see what works. And maybe this team does need to be more in the direction of Canales' thinking. Whatever the team needs to do, it can't be what they were doing last year. It can't be what they've been, doing in the past. I'm always going to be critical of that artificial turf because it has hurt your best players, whether it was Christian McCaffrey, J.C. Horn, Dante Jackson. That those guys should have been elite while they were here in Carolina. They should have been number one at their position. Should not have even been a question. Yes, we have Derek Brown. Yes, you got Brian Burns. That defense should be the best in the league, and they should be unstoppable. But the team has a quitting culture. The quitting culture is a losing culture. And as long as people keep saying you need to fire that guy, you need to get rid of that guy, you need to fire this person, you need to get rid of that person, you need to sell the team, you need to do this, you do that to lose this, lose that, lose this guy. I'm not, I mean, you got people already, not even, within once well, they didn't hire who I wanted. They had told you we should have gone with CJ Stroud. Well, screw you. CJ Stroud would have sucked in Carolina. Why? Because you had a losing culture. Where'd the losing culture come from? It came from whining. It came from an owner listening, buying the team and treating the team like a fan and listening to a bunch of whining little crybaby fans that were trying to get everybody fired even when the team was undefeated. They were looking for people to complain about on this team. I mean, those fans, you know, they're like, dude, quit quitting. If you're going to quit, at least quit being a loser. If you're going to be a quitter, at least quit something worth quitting that'll make you a winner. So quit being a quitter. I mean, quit being a loser. Quit being a crybaby. You got the ability to quit on people. Quit on yourself. Quit being yourself. Because if yourself is going out there throwing tantrums, breaking stuff, trying to get everybody fired, trying to get good people fired in particular, you're you're not worth having in any room. You're not worth having in any environment. You're just making the room worse. You're just making the team worse. You're just making everybody around you worse. And that's why you got friendship problems. That's why you got family problems. That's why you got your problems within your team because you're just a toxic loser of a person. You can either look forward to the future, wake up tomorrow and go, you know what? Yesterday was rough. Yeah, I've had a lousy 2023. Yeah, I've had a lousy season last year. Yeah, my team has been rough, but you know what? I'm going to be loyal to my team and I'm going to start believing in people. Come up there and go, all right, welcome to the team, coach. Or you can sit there and say, this, This was the best you could do. This was the guy you got. This is the guy Dan Morgan got. Dan Morgan's qualified for the job. He knows how to find people. Why? Because he's got respect from the Bills. He helped turn the Bills around. Dan Morgan left the Bills. They're not as strong. They're not making as many strong decisions or bringing a kind of personnel that they brought in when he was there. Seahawks. They love Dan Morgan. He did a great job with the Seahawks. That's why I was there several years. And then from the Seahawks to the Bills, improved the Bills, made them a respectable organization. Bills, before Dan Morgan got there, ugh. And then Dan Morgan spends last year coming back home to Carolina, and instantly he's promoted from AGM to the GM. And then they said, no, that's not enough of a promotion. We're going to make him president of football operations too. Like, whoa, that's a big promotion. This is a different team. How good is this guy? They like him around the league. And now they're giving him total control of the team. This is an owner that does not give up power. This is an invasive, annoying owner. Okay, maybe he sold the team. He just didn't sell it financially on paper. Well, he's always been interfering. Yeah, I don't. They didn't make a resume hire. They didn't make a normal hire that they've made with David Tepper. They didn't make a popularity hire. They made a Dan Morgan hire. This is a new team. If you got a new team, you can be a new person.